Well, welcome to today's webinar on higher interest rates and their seesaw effect on wealth transfer strategies. We're very excited to share this information with you and to introduce you to our speaker. Hopefully you've all got lunch and maybe something to drink, so relax, sit back and enjoy what we're doing. We're going to get started shortly as we still have people joining us, but I'd like to briefly introduce myself and my co-host, Michelle Brock. I'm Sue McEntee, and I'm the Executive Director of the Catholic Foundation of Southwest Iowa, headquartered in Des Moines. So we're the Des Moines Diocese. And I'm joined by my co-host, Michelle Brock, who is Executive Director of the Catholic Foundation of the Archdiocese of Dubuque, and they're headquartered in Cedar Rapids. We have some general information on the screen about our foundations, and we encourage you to reach out to either Michelle or myself if you have any questions. Our Catholic foundations are community foundations, but they're faith-based, not place-based. And we're separate, but very collaborative. Michelle and I speak often and talk about things happening in the diocese and really across the state of Iowa often. We help meet the needs of those that our Catholic community serves through sustainable funding by connecting our faith to investing and philanthropy and our donors and organizations. We work with these donors and organizations to help meet both spiritual and human needs in a manner that reflects our Catholic values. The Catholic Foundation of Southwest Iowa has been in existence for just over 12 years. And Michelle, I think, are you guys at 10?
Actually, we'll be at 14 in January.
Oh, 14 years. So we've got lots of years of experience in the community foundation realm. So please reach out to us and let us know if there's anything we can do to help you or any organizations that you might serve. Michelle?
Thank you, Sue. And now on to the webinar. First, I just want to let the attorneys on board know and remind them that it's been approved for continuing legal education credits. So we will send that out to those attorneys afterwards. It is being recorded. We'll have that on our website, afterwards, if anybody wanted to go back and access that later. If you have questions during the presentation, as everybody's used to by now, there's the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. If you could put your questions in there, and we'll be moderating that and going through those as appropriately. So now on to our presenter. We thank so much for Dwayne Richardson for joining us today. I've got the pleasure of meeting Dwayne, I don't know, about a year and a half ago or so in our community, just through networking in Cedar Rapids, and heard him speak and thought this was a great topic. I actually had a couple advisors note how great his topic was and how it would be nice to have him speak to a broader or different audience. So Sue and I are pleased to be able to bring Dwayne to you. Dwayne is a Vice President, Wealth Planning Trust Services, Midwest One, and has over 40 years experience working with successful business owners, executives, professionals, and retirees, structuring and managing investments in their overall wealth to achieve goals for themselves, their families, and for many clients, their businesses. He holds JD, CFP, and AEP designations. So welcome, Dwayne, and I will turn it over to you.
Well, thank you, Sue, and thank you also, Michelle. Just kind of a little distracted there. We had an emergency vehicle going down the street here behind us, so I was trying to mute them out.
Oh, Dwayne, we just lost you.
Yeah, I'm going to share my screen with the group, and give me a second here while we do this and then get and the seesaw effect that they can have on some of the wealth transfer strategies that we've been using with our clients. You know, since
Wayne,
right,
microphone keeps cutting in and out, so I'm not sure if there's air there or if it's in your headset.
Okay, sorry about that.
That's okay. It wasn't doing that earlier. Technology. No. We'll keep trying.
All right, we'll keep going. So yeah, we've had steady interest rate.
It's just cut out again. I wonder if it's a wire on your end.
Don't know. Everything seems to be connected. And is it cutting out on you still?
Now it seems okay.
Okay. Well, we'll try again here. What I wanted to do was, take a look at several of the wealth transfer strategies, particularly ones that involve different charitable entities. And so we could take a look and see what kind of impact these the rising rates have on them. You can see from the agenda, we'll look at the raising rates. Also, that's complicated by the 2025 tax cliff when Tax Cut and Jobs Act expires at the end of 2025. So we'll take a real quick look at that as well, and then really get into about 6 different planned giving strategies, as I said, that involve charities, and take a look at what the impact is of the rising rates. Also, there's a couple provisions both in the Secure Act and Secure Act 2.0 that I wanted to highlight near the end that created some other opportunities for us. And then we'll finish up just with some observations that I make in conclusions. So that's what I planned for the time that we have together. Here's a quick look at the AFR rates, and I prepared this back in February of this year for that other seminar that Michelle talked about. And you can see from this, today, right, these were all based on the February rates for each of these years. And back when I first put this together, the February rate for this year was 4.6%. Well, we're up to 5.6% now, as you can see, on the bottom of the here, 5.6%. Well, when we look back over history, the last time we've seen this kind of rate was back in 2002. So it's really been over 20 years since we've seen anything like that. And as I mentioned, we've got the tax cliff coming up, which I'm sure a lot of you are probably very well aware of and talking to clients about already. For example, some of the changes that are there, one of the biggest ones that I know I talk with clients about right now is the expiration of the bonus exclusion rates that we have right now. For individuals, almost 13 million. For married couples, just under 26 million. But look what happens January 1 of 2026. It all gets cut in about half. So, this obviously just deals with the estate tax piece, but there's also about 23 other income tax provisions that are also expiring, things like the 20% qualified business income deduction. We're going back to the old top tax bracket of 39.6 instead of 37. AMT exemptions are going to be cut. Child tax credits are also reduced, and standard deductions are also going back down. I guess if there's any silver lining to it, the $10,000 SALT limit goes away on charitable deductions, and we do get personal exemptions back. But on the heels of that, seeing the rising interest rates and knowing that this tax cliff is looming out there again, I started thinking about, well, what's going to be the impact on a lot of these strategies that we've been using really for over 20 years now, as we've talked with clients. As you can see from this slide, we have a real smorgasbord of strategies that we've used. And over the last 20 years, we've had Green Book provisions, budget proposals, even some proposed legislation a couple of years ago that would have eliminated or dramatically changed many of these. But none of those, thankfully, were passed or came into being. So question is, what are we going to do? How does this affect those strategies that we're using with that involve charities? These are the 6 that stay with us, and so we can see what happens with them. Now, for most of these examples, here's a set of assumptions that I've made, for putting together the numbers so that you can see. And there's a few slides where I've kind of changed these, or I'll use the November rate instead of the February rate, but I'll point those out as we get to them. So with that, what I want to do is let's start off with remainder trust, charitable remainder trusts. And as I'm sure many of you know, there's a couple different versions of that: the CRAT, the Charitable Remainder Annuity Trust, and also CRUT, the Unitrust. So, and I know when I've used these, I've used these recently with some clients who had a very high stock concentration, and we used a CRUT as a way to try to help unwind that stock concentration. And we've had some clients where they were going to actually sell a very highly appreciated asset, whether it's stocks, whether it's a business asset, maybe farmland, whatever. And we've used the CRUT and CRAT, or the Remainder Trust, in conjunction with the sale to try to reduce not only the current income tax bite, but spread the bite over a large part of that asset sale over a number of years. And then recently, as I mentioned, the Secure Act threw us a curveball when it took away the stretch provisions of the IRAs, and we'll get into that a little bit later with an example. So first, what I wanted to take a look at is a CRAT. And here I'm just assuming a simple 5% CRAT, the minimum payout amount. And you can see, on the left-hand side, the 1.6 and the 4.6% AFR rates, everything is basically the same. Fair market value is the same going in. The total annuity payments that come out to the donors is the same. Even the remainder to the charities is the same. But look at the difference when we get into the charitable contribution, the charitable deduction, actually, that the clients get to take. So at least as far as the CRATs go, I would say let's score 1 for the higher AFR rates for sure. Well, on the flip side of that, the CRUT, same factors as the CRAT, same assumptions being made. But what's interesting is you see that, okay, the fair market value of the assets going into the trust the same, the remainder to the charity is the same. Everything is the same on the left-hand side again, including the lifetime payments to the donor. And surprisingly, I expected to see a lot bigger difference here, but between, for the charitable deduction between the two, there's not that much difference. So that made me start thinking about, okay, if this is the 5% minimum CRAT or CRUT, is there a difference if we try to optimize it? So I looked at some examples for an optimized CRUT and found, pretty much the same thing. With the optimized CRUT, that what we're going to do is we're going to have about a 10% remainder interest in order to qualify to pass the 10% remainder test. So the charitable deduction is going to be the same no matter what the AFR rate is. And the remainder to the charities, really, there's not that much difference. And really not that much difference in the lifetime payments to the donor either. So again, kind of surprising to me that the higher AFR rate didn't result in more of a difference. So when it comes to the charitable remainder trusts, as we said, we scored 1. The CRATs really did better with this higher AFR rates. The CRUTs, kind of a mixed bag, really kind of right in the middle. So, well, if that's the case with the remainder trust, I wondered, well, what about with the lead trusts? I don't know about you. I don't see these quite as often as I see the remainder trust. However, I have used these with clients in a number of instances, again, where they had the sale of a business property or farmland. I've used it with a number of executives also, all of whom were charitably inclined. And these executives, when they retired, had a large lump sum, non-qualified deferred comp payout coming out. Or even those that are still employed, maybe they have stock options that they need to exercise. before they expire. So all of those could result in some very large taxable events. And for the clients that are charitably inclined already, I say, well, let's use a grantor version of this lead trust so that you can and have the trust make the charitable contributions you're going to make anyway over the next X number of years. And then you get to deduct the present value of that. So it works very nicely in those situations. So what do the AFR rates and the changes in that do to the lead trust? And in this case, this is a 1% CLAT. So we're gifting about $10,000 per year. I did inflate that at 3% in these cases. And you can see the total amounts to the charity are the same. The total remainder interest is the same. And again, the total gifted, there's a little slight edge for the higher AFR rate. And as far as the charitable deduction goes, there's a slight edge also for the lower AFR rate. So really, depending on what the client's objectives are, if my objectives are to save some income taxes and try to lock in more of those bonus exclusion amounts right now, well, the higher AFR rates may be just the ticket for that client. Or if they're looking just to increase the charitable deduction, well, then, maybe the ship has sailed. We might see lower rates again. But if we're just looking to maximize the deduction, then the lower AFR rates work better for the CLAT. Okay, that was the annuity trust. What about a charitable lead unit trust? And surprisingly, this surprised me also, that what we saw is same terms, 1% payout, $10,000 per year going out to the charities each year for 10 years. But the total gifted and the charitable deductions, they're virtually identical. There's really not much difference at all on that. So as I was thinking about these and scoring them, I think the charitable lead trusts, again, a slight edge to the lower AFR rates, but really not quite as much as I was expecting. Well, next, I wanted to take a look at some charitable gift annuities. This is, and I want to get to this in just a moment, to talk about one of the changes that the Secure Act 2.0 gave us with respect to charitable gift annuities. But I thought, okay, let's start just with the charitable gift annuity, the standard one, and see, well, how is that affected by the change in the AFR rates? So my fact pattern in this case, have a gift of about $100,000 being made. The donor's ages 69 and 63, their life expectancy about 24 years, and the American Council on Gift Annuities recommended rate is 4.9% for couples that age. So you can see the annuity payments, really the AFR had no impact on that whatsoever. And what the real difference came in calculating what the present value of the annuity was, and also the charitable deduction. And again, you can see there is a significant difference, over 10 times more charitable deduction with the higher AFR rate. So clearly, in this case, with the standard charitable gift annuities, the advantage goes to the higher AFR rates. So what about the changes that the Secure Act 2.0 brought in? Well, what it allowed us to do was now to have split interest gifts. So we could actually, before now, you could only use the QCD for direct gifts to the charities. Well, now we can actually do a split gift to a CRUT, or even a charitable gift annuity. There are some limitations, though. $50,000 is the most that I can put into this. And kind of scratch my head about some of these limitations, don't understand why Congress thought they needed to do these. But that $50,000 limit is one. The other, the split interest, the only asset that can be in those split interest entities can be the QCD assets. So when you think about having, or when I think about having a CRUT or a CRAT with only $50,000 in it, you know, I'm part of the trust department of the bank where I am right now. And when we start hitting those levels, that's when we start thinking and the wheels start turning about, okay, it's probably about time to wrap up this trust. But so the legislation is really requiring us to have some really small annuity or small gifts into these trusts. The other interesting thing, and again, head scratcher, is okay. So the CGA, the distributions have to begin with 1 year, and it only qualifies for the QCD gift to the charitable gift annuity if the payout is going to be 5% or higher. All right. Well, one thing that they 2.0 did allow for is beginning in 2024, we are going to be indexing these limits for inflation. So the $100,000 is going to be inflated, and we hope so the 50,000 would be. So now here's one change, and when I was going over the slide deck again last night, I realized, whoops, I forgot to put in one minor important fact, and that's this big red X. So on your slide deck there, you're going to want to cross out any charitable deduction, because just like qualified charitable distributions directly to the charity, we don't get to take a deduction for that. I don't have to claim it as income, but I don't get to take the deduction. Well, the same thing is true under the Secure Act 2.0. So you can see with the higher AFR rates, it would have been better. You know, I've got two different sets of donors. And the other obvious thing is that, okay, if we're talking a QCD, one of the two donors has to be at least 70.5 in order to qualify for the QCD. That hasn't changed. So in that prior example that I looked at, where I had a 69-year-old and a 63 or 64-year-old, they wouldn't qualify to be able to do this QCD to the charitable gift annuity. However, these two couples could, because they meet that 70.5 test. But you can see in both cases, they would have been much better off. You know, they would have been able to deduct this if it hadn't been the QCD, and the higher AFR rates would have been much better for them. You know, just if you want a more thorough dissection of and analysis of I think it's section 307 of the Secure Act 2.0 that deals with the QCDs to the charitable gift annuities. And I've got a reference down here to this from Paul Hood. It's actually kind of tongue-in-cheek, and it's kind of humorous in several points or several places when he starts talking about the limitations and trying to understand why Congress was doing what it was doing. So if you want to know more about that and really get into the weeds, that's a good article to follow up on. All right, so QCDs to the charitable gift annuities, again, does better with the higher AFR rates. But what's interesting, even with the QCDs, it does better not because of the income tax deduction, because there isn't one, but it's because of the AFR rates themselves. If the AFR rates get too low, then the ACGA's annuity payout, recommended payout, may not meet that 5% test that's required. So just something to watch. All right. Here's one, and in full transparency, I haven't used this strategy with any clients yet, I say. But for the right clients, I think this could be an interesting thing to do. In fact, I think about one of the clients I worked with earlier this year, a retiring farm family. And tragically, the heir who was going to take over the farm died unexpectedly. And so now the clients were left with no heir and no one to really take over the farm. Well, in that case, I don't know if if this is the right strategy for them, but that's the kind of situation where we might find clients who have either a very nice residence or they've got the farm, something that they want to keep. They want to be able to live in the residence for the rest of their lives. They want to have the income from the farm for the rest of their lives, but they're willing to have the remainder after they pass to go to the charities of their choice. So in that case, this remainder for the farmer residents may actually work out nicely. So here's some facts. In this case, again, I mentioned the 82 and 80-year-old. They want lifetime use of the home on the farm, and they want the income from the farm. And you can see from a tax deduction standpoint, they clearly, the remainder, and by the way, in order to make this work, they'd have to transfer the property or the farm into an irrevocable trust, with the remainder going to the qualified charities. Under the lower AFR rates, they would have a much larger income tax deduction up front that they could maybe pair with, in the case of the clients I was talking about, as they were winding up the farm operation, they sold all of the equipment in the springtime this year, or right before planting time started. They sold all of the equipment, had about a $700,000 gain, all of which was recaptured as ordinary income because all of the equipment had been fully depreciated. So they could have used, if they had done something like this, they could have used a deduction like you see here to maybe offset that gain on the sale of the equipment. Even at the lower the lower deduction amount during the at 5.6% AFR, what I'm showing here on the right is just some of the estimated income tax deductions. So maybe they didn't have sufficient AGI to be able to deduct the full $551,000 if they had done this year. But as you, I'm sure, know, we get to carry the deductions forward for this year plus 5 more years. So in their case, they were able to actually, in this hypothetical, they were able to actually use up all of that deduction over time. But the tax deduction clearly is better with the lower AFR rate. That's still not an insubstantial amount, though, at the higher AFR. So as far as remainders to charities go, yeah, I would say I'd chalk that one up. Advantage goes to the lower AFR rates. But again, not something to totally take off the plate or not consider. Okay, another change that the Secure Act in 2019 brought us was they eliminated the stretch provision for a lot of designated beneficiaries. The exception is 5 eligible designated beneficiaries. We're not going to get into all the details and definitions of that today, but in order to get the stretch provisions, you had to be one of those 5. The alternative is, if you're still a designated beneficiary, well, then you're going to have basically, you have to drain the IRA or the Roth by the end of the 10th year after the date of death of the owner. So put together an example and said, okay, what many clients, or what many of the advisors that I work with started questioning and wondering is, well, gee, could we use some charitable remainder trusts or something like that to replace or to mimic that stretch provision, since we don't have it for the designated beneficiaries. So in the following example, let's say we have a mother's gross estate is around $15 million. We're going to assume that she dies this year and she's after her required beginning date. Now, as the proposed regs told us earlier this year, end of last year, I don't remember when they came out, but what we thought son would be able to do is wait until the end of the 10th year to totally drain the IRA out. But that wasn't the case that we learned from the proposed regs. If the client dies, if the owner dies after the required beginning date, then the beneficiary is going to have to continue taking it out as fast as mom or dad or the owner did, and it has to be totally drained by the end of that 10th year. So not quite the result that we were expecting. So that really put some fuel and impetus behind looking at using CRTs as a possible replacement. So what we did in this case is we've got a 60-year-old son. Mom has a $2 million IRA. I assumed it's growing at about 6%. We're going to put it into a lifetime CRAT with son as the beneficiary. And we were going to do an optimized CRAT so we could get more out to the son. But, you know, mom planned to, in this case, leave a large remainder to her parish foundation anyway. So what we're able to do with this, using the CRATs, is, and you can see, and at both the 1.6 or the 5.6% rate, really I guess it depends on who your client is, what your perspective is on this, which one is better. Well, if the son is my client, I like that 5.6% rate much better. Total distribution to him, including the total plan value that this software uses. And by the way, I skipped over that earlier. I'm using for these calculations Brentmark, a version of the Lineberg number cruncher that Brentmark distributes. So as part of their calculations, those total distributions to son included the benefits of the estate tax savings and the after-tax distributions to the son, assuming there's a 6% portfolio that the distributions were going into. So what the son, the total distributions, total plan value, this includes all of the other pieces. Clearly, with the higher AFR, we're a little bit better, a lot better than with the low AFR. Now, if my client is the parish foundation, though, I kind of like the low AFR rates a little bit better, right? But still, even at the high AFR rates, the foundation is going to get at the end of son's lifetime, I think it's about a 23-year life expectancy for him, still is going to be about $1.5 million that they would stand to get. So how do we score that? For the CRAT, as a beneficiary of the IRA, I would say advantage goes to the AFR rates. Again, depending if son is our client. But if from the charity's perspective, they would prefer those lower AFR rates to get a higher remainder amount. Well, if you will allow me, and I'm getting pretty close to being done here, Michelle and Sue, so I have lots of time for questions if there are any. But just some observations I wanted to make. Again, at a very high level, we looked at 6 different wealth transfer strategies that involved charities and how they could be affected by the rising AFR rates. And when I say very high level, I just tested a couple factors in this. I didn't try to explore, what the right terms were for the trusts. And as far as the CRUTs go, didn't look at doing a flip CRUT or a NI CRUT or a NIM CRUT. We just used standard CRUT provisions. And in a lot of the cases, I didn't use an increasing annuity payment coming out to the non-charitable beneficiaries. So that's what I mean by very high level. I just tested one set of terms and factors. And as we were looking at this and going through these, we saw a real mixed bag of results. Some did better with the higher AFR rates, others did better with lower. And finally, we saw that, better really depends on whose perspective you're considering, right? Whether it's the charitable foundations, whether it's the individuals, whether it's the donor and how much of an income tax deduction they get. So my conclusions then is that, hey, the charitable strategies, in fact, all of those wealth transfer strategies that was on the earlier slide, that we've been using for many years in working with clients to freeze estates, to reduce the size of their taxable estates, they still work even with the rising interest rates. Some of them not as well as they used to, but they all still work. Choosing and designing the right combination of terms and the strategies is impacted by the rising rates, and really, just have to really roll up your sleeves and test those different factors. And the process really needs to include a team of advisors. No one of us is smart enough to know everything that we need to know for the client. So I really enjoy rolling up our sleeves, linking arms, and working with the client's other advisors, their attorney, their accountant, outside investment advisors, all of us together, brainstorming and trying to come up with different factors and combination of strategies to get us the best result that we can for the client. So the good news is that these best options, when you put all that team together, you may come up with some pretty complex solutions, but they aren't hard to use or to implement if you've got the right team together, working together as partners. So with that, Michelle and Sue, I'll just say thank you and just see if there's any questions that you had come in, or if any folks want to ask any now.
I guess I'd like to comment on what you ended with saying, a team approach. I've been in this industry for a number of years, and initially it was a lot of silo conversations that investment advisors would have with clients and not-for-profit development folks would have with their donors. And really, it was probably about 15, maybe 20 years ago when they started the team approach. And a lot of that came out of the CAP program, the Chartered Advisor of Philanthropy. And that really was bring everybody to the table. Let's make sure we're doing the right thing for the donor and the client. And I just think that's so important. So any of you who are out there, know that you do not have to talk to donors or clients alone, that there are other folks that can bring their minds to the table, and it really does end up being in the best interest of the individual that you're serving and their philanthropic and financial interests.
You have one question that came in. Please explain the optimized CRAT.
The optimized CRAT. Let me get back to this. And so when I said optimized CRAT, I probably, to be honest, misspoke, because I was thinking more in terms of the optimized CRUT. With the CRAT, as you know, we have to pick a percent or a dollar amount that's going to be distributed to the client each year. And we test that at the beginning right up front to see if it passes the test, if there's enough remainder interest left for the charitable designees at the end. And if it passes, then great, you're good to go. We can increase the rates that are being paid out to the non-charitable beneficiary, but we have to test it then. So I don't know if that is a sufficient answer or if that helps.
Well, hopefully if they have one explanation, they can put them more in the Q&A and ask for more details there. And we have another one that has popped in here. Oh, well, thank you. So it must have answered their question. Thank you, Dwayne. Appreciate that. Yeah, I would echo what Sue said. I had an advisor that just we were in some correspondence yesterday regarding trying to find the best solution for one of his clients, and I appreciated the back and forth that we had. As gift planners at charitable foundations, we also appreciate to be involved in that table, especially when it comes to beneficiary, the designations that they put on any types of gifts they have. Oftentimes we get gifts here and it doesn't say a specific end user. It just says the Catholic Foundation in general. And sometimes there's no names on things that come over here. Now, obviously in the case of a trust, a more complex gift agreement, we would have that information hopefully solidly planned out, but or even a bequest that we'll receive will just be very general in nature. When verbal conversations had indicated they wanted it to be to something specific. And so we're always here and happy to help work with the advisors on which particular fund or future fund, if they want to set up a fund with that gift down the road, how to make sure those that nomenclature is reflected accurately. So we can make sure we honor the donor exactly how they would like to. Question, just are the PowerPoint slides available on the website? We will be adding that as well as this live or this recording to our website. So you can look for that later, and we'll send out that information after the webinar is over as well.
A key
I'm
to some of the
curious.
difference that Michelle and I bring to the table through our foundations is that connection of our faith. And so that's a really big component of what we do. So at the Catholic Foundation of Southwest Iowa, 98% of our portfolios have been screened for Catholic values investing. And, you know, we really try to get that as close to 100% as we can in everything that we do. And that is something that is a specialty that we both can bring to the table. So if you're working with clients who are of the Catholic faith, know that you have some options to help them connect their faith to their philanthropy and their investing options, if that's something you'd like to do.
I would add, we both offer donor advised funds and have very competitive fees for those as well, if they're exploring that particular option.
Yeah.
I'm curious, Sue and Michelle, have you seen an uptick in interest around charitable gift annuities with the interest rates coming up the way they have?
You know, interestingly enough, I maybe very so slightly. I've certainly promoted them a tad bit more with the higher rates. I've done a few more types of promotions around that, but I haven't seen a significant uptick in that at this point, surprisingly.
No,
and maybe
I would agree with what Michelle said. The area that we're seeing an uptick is, as of July, we started offering a money market fund for some of our parishes and schools and other organizations that we serve. And at 5.26%, if they've got money sitting in a checking account or a passbook savings account, it really is a smart time to move those over into a money market for even a short time. And they're very accessible. Put it in today, take it out tomorrow if you want. But a really good way to garner a little extra interest income right now if you've got some funds sitting back for something.
question though, Dwayne, and you talked about that the end of the testamentary IRA provision where it just could go on forever, and now it's 10 years. And that's something I have had some discussion with for donors who not necessarily using the charitable remainder trust, but using a charitable gift annuity for that. They can also do that provision through the CGA as well as a CRT.
Right.
All right, well, just know Sue and I are certainly available if other questions arise. And as I said, the web slides and the webinar will be on our websites. I'm sure Dwayne, you can certainly look him up if you have questions. Dwayne Richardson at Midwest One, and reach out to him if there's some partnership you'd like to do there. We appreciate everybody attending today's webinar. What a great topic. Thank you, Dwayne. It's always fascinating to see how changes in our economy affect gift provisions. So we're just very honored as your Catholic Community Foundations in the state of Iowa to be able to sponsor and make these connections with all of you. If you have clients that have interest in a legacy that aligns with our Catholic values, just keep us in mind. We'd be happy to help out. With that, I think that's all we have today. We appreciate you again attending, and thanks and God bless. Have a great day.
Happy Thanksgiving, everyone.